the round table with MAMLEO. All right. All right. So back to hey, folks have started to wake up. The lines are loaded. Mr. Dowdy, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Thank you for holding on.
I'm still here.
Okay. I know you're still here. I know we've got other callers on the line there, but Mr. Dowdy.
I can barely hear.
Okay. Stand.
I can barely hear the broadcast.
All right. Okay. Stand by, Dan.
Is there someone else on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we've got other call. Yeah, there's other callers on the line.
Yes,
so you've woken. You've got
Pastor Dan.
Yep, Dan, stand by. Can you hear me, Dan?
Is that Eric?
No. Can you hear me?
I can barely hear the broadcast in the background. I don't hear it in my head. In my. I don't hear it on my phone.
All right, Mr. Dowdy, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. And then we have another caller on there. Okay. All right, so
I hear you,
okay.
but I don't hear the broadcast.
Okay, let's put him on hold.
Put him on hold, please,
so we can get the. All right. Okay. All right, and Mr. Dowdy, that's fine too. We're going to bring in our new caller, first-time caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the round table with MAMLEO.
Well, good morning to all of you there.
Good morning.
I want to say thank you for the lesson real quick. I just got on blackfacts.com just for listening for 10 seconds.
Okay. And so you're getting a history lesson here, and this is what
I got a huge history lesson.
Okay, and this is what we're gonna, and this is why we want to incorporate that with Mr. Dowdy, because we think our history they want to erase it, and a lot of it, even though those of us who have tried to research things, we don't know all about history,
Okay.
and it's important that we work together to do that. So, Mr. Dowdy, before we let you go,
And like right now, I still can't hear the broadcast.
Okay. Let's, Mr. Dowdy,
Yes.
what I want to do is to let you finish your comment there, but I would love to have Pastor Hobbs get your information and pass mine along to you. We'd love to have you on the broadcast in studio, but also to continue to work with you on informing our audience, but informing the world on our history and what's going on here. And you're right. I think people feel like they're somewhat safe here in Massachusetts, and I tell them you're no more safer here than you are in Florida. It's
So true.
So don't get it twisted.
As he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Absolutely. So, you were saying again about the organization that you work with, you and your partner.
Yeah, so, I'll keep it brief,
Sure.
but we went to Boston University and MIT. He happens to be a Kappa. I mean, I'm a Sigma, but somehow we ended up being cool. And we're old heads.
We got that.
We're old heads, and we were part of like a cadre of black technologists in the Boston area back in the late '80s, early '90s, who realized that the internet, there weren't any roadblocks for it like there were for banking and real estate. They're always trying to block people that look like us from knowing about the insides and outs. But the internet, you could actually just be willing to learn something new and build something from it. And Ken actually quit his first job because he wrote a piece of software that made his entire year's salary in 2 months.
Wow.
And he's like, I don't have to work for somebody else. I can work for myself.
Wow.
And so we've been doing stuff in Boston for a long time. In fact, we own the domain Roxbury.com. We own the domain Dorchester.com, but we sold that to the Dorchester hotel chain. We helped put the Bay State banner online back in the 90s.
Wow.
The first time they actually tried to go online. And when I was listening to your conversation, our mission, this is a passion project because we weren't making any money from it. We started blackfacts.com because we realized that technology is a way for us to preserve and protect our history, because we don't care what Mark Zuckerberg says. We don't care what Elon Musk is trying to do on Twitter. We have our own stories.
And let me tell you.
And we even have, a section that is called, Diverse Inventors that talks about the inventions by people of color.
Right.
And I could not find Charles Frederick Page. And I'm like, okay, this is another one we have to add. These are the stories we have to add and make sure we keep track of, because our kids have to know about them. And we've been on a mission to try to get this into Boston public schools because we're having great success getting it into schools in other states. And so I thought maybe I should call you guys and say, hey, you guys should be aware of this. You start by two black men. We even have a whole section on the Divine Nine because, of course, we're Greek, so we cover every single black fraternity and sorority. But as difficult for us to reach our own people
right. Well,
as it is for us to reach the majority to say, hey, we want you to engage. And we want our own people. We want homeschoolers and parents to teach their kids these stories.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we make it free on the internet.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying, because it's reason why Dr. Bradley and I originally started the broadcast for MAMLEO. I was a former president of MAMLEO as well as Dr. Bradley, and we realized we didn't have a voice here in Boston, right, that really kind of had this type of conversation, right? We started on Sunday nights, right, at 10 o'clock at night, right, and then we were fortunate with the brainchild of Pastor Bruce Wall and his crew to bring this format to where we can be here every Saturday. And right, we don't make any money off this. We pay for this time, the MAMLEO organization, as well as our sponsors, because we think it's important. So no one to tell us what we can talk about and who we can talk about and their version of us, right? And this is why we support this, why we've been here for over a decade doing this, right? Because we see the importance. And when people like you call, it gives us hope that there are others out there like us, and we're not trying to have people who are just mimicking or a cult personality, but dealing with the reality of the situation that we're in. So we would love to, if you would hold on, and matter of fact, if you wanted, I don't know if Pastor Dan had or the other caller has any comments or questions for you. So I'm going to go to Dan first before we let you go, and then before we hang up from you, I want to get Pastor Hobbs to get your information. But stand by. I want to see if Pastor Dan want to bring him into the call, and then we'll go back to our other caller. Pastor Dan, good morning. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning. Yes, make sure this gentleman has all my information, because I'd like to have him call me this Wednesday morning on Sound Travels. So because I love what he's doing, and it's difficult to maintain a position that everything is fair and everything is up and up when you keep hearing about the fact that people who look like us are silenced in so many subtle ways. I didn't realize that two women had solved an unsolvable math problem and they're black. I didn't realize that. As a matter of fact, it just kind of popped up on my feed last night.
What, through Hidden Figures? The movie? Or
what? No, just recently. There's been this big trigonometry problem that could not be solved, and not only did they solve it, but they've come up with 7 or 8 different variations of solving it.
And here in America or in Britain? In America. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Pardon?
No, he was just saying.
Yeah, because...
So, Dan, stand by. I want to bring another caller back in case he had any questions or comments for Mr. Dowdy. Caller, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
One, that problem you talk about with those two young ladies is a 200-year-old problem.
Yeah.
And it's been out, but it's been really small. It hasn't been put out like that. And as the other guy, I'm sorry I don't know your name.
Mr. Dowdy.
Like I said, I got on your website for blackfacts.com. Maybe you could put that in the banner or make it like a big poster, like in certain black neighborhoods that, I ain't gonna lie, we desperately need it, especially in Massachusetts.
And what part of are you from Boston? Are you in the Boston area, caller?
I'm in Roxbury,
okay,
or what they call Nubian Square. The only thing new about that area is just the new potholes.
The new potholes. So how did you hear about the broadcast? It's your first time.
Actually, I heard, this podcast right now, actually. I was driving to work, and I was flipping through the radio station, wanted to hear something different, and I heard yours, and I had to stay on it. And I waited for you guys to put the number out, which took a little longer than necessary, but I just had to get it, and now it's on my speed dial. 617-280-0685. There we go. Oh, don't worry, I got it on my phone. It's pre-programmed. Might want to advertise that a little more. I'm saying all the neighborhoods we're in, I mean, it's great to hear. I didn't know about the guy who beat the Wright brothers. It's not to hear that. Maybe we should put like posters or like banners or something about all the that we
How about the school system that was surpassing all the other school systems in its area? It relegated it to the black folk. They were succeeding, and then after they realized the success, they changed the districts and destroyed it.
Yeah. There was also,
we know.
Okay, but there was also I watched the documentary. There was a national band competition, and they used to have it for years. And then when they actually invited black schools to it, and the black schools just beating them out the water because they were just unbelievable at what their musical arrangements were, then they discontinued the competition.
Well,
it's called jealousy and envious because we're just that damn good. Oh, sorry, that good.
If I can inject here, I appreciate the euphoria and the happiness, and I think it's very nice to have it. Hold up, please. Let me say this. There's another individual, and this is arguably, but I think it's something that this individual who does history need to include this person when you put him on your website. You might not know him. His name is John Cram, JOHNCRAM. John Cram.
I'm sorry, what was that last name?
Cram, CRAM.
Okay.
He's the individual that first invented the folding chair. So when you go to a shampoo, or you sit down and you fold your chair and you put it in your car, John Cram in 1865 created the folding chair.
And shampoo?
The shampoo chair that actually falls back, and you can wash your hair, or recliner, or you can fold it.
Yeah, okay.
He created that.
Wow.
So that's another individual that tended to be kind of like going to the wayside.
Guess what?
Yeah.
I was the first black African in the Massachusetts history to ever get his master technician license by just walking in and taking the test.
Well, brother, that's history. That's history.
Yeah, that's history. It had never happened before, and because you have to, you have a whole procedure where you have to have somebody else sign for you and do a year in apprenticeship and all that nonsense. I told him I wasn't going to do it. Yeah. Test me.
But this is my point. My point is that when we allow someone else to, and Malcolm X said this,
exactly.
When we allow someone else to educate our children, we can only blame ourselves when our children are not correctly educated about us.
Right.
And that's
absolutely.
Hold up, brother. That's why I'm putting this out here. Larry, we need to bring this brother in and get a feel for, and I help them with the research. I don't have a problem sitting down and doing. I do it for hours, and just kind of bring these names forward, and I'll bring them to you to say, check out this guy. You may not have this individual. We have so much creativity in our community, in our history, that we have been deprived of knowing.
Right. Mr. Dowdy, if you would hold on, if Pastor Hobbs can get your information, and he has my contact information, he can give you my phone number so that you have it. We would love
and give him my phone number.
Absolutely, we would love to. We're going to take care of that, Dan. Dan Walker, Pastor Dan Walker. He also has a radio show here on Wednesdays from 8 to 9. That sound travels here from 8 to 9 a.m. weekly here on Boston Praise Radio as well. So we'll get his information to you as well, Dan. But Mr. Dowdy, if you could hold on, sir.
Sure.
So that we can get some other calls, and Pastor Walker, stand by, so that Pastor Hobbs can get your information and pass our information along to you, so we can schedule to come on the broadcast and we can continue this. And we'll do our research in the process so we can inform. That's what this is all about, sir. And we appreciate you calling this morning because, and as the other caller who's listening in, what we're trying to do is expand this out because our history should be no mystery, and that's what it's been for quite some time.
Exactly.
And you're right. It's not all about how much you make off it. As you said it, when you said, I almost started laughing because we don't get paid to come. People say, they get up every Saturday morning. We do this out of the love for our community, out of love for self.
Absolutely.
And the history, and I'm so grateful for my brother Rhodes and Dr. Bradley. We've known each other. He's my big brother. We've known each other for a long time. And Rhodes is our adopted little brother. He's now been part of the broadcast. In enlightening folks, because knowledge is power. And I think that's where we depend on other people to tell us what our history is, and then they water it down if it's not.
Can I just tweak that? Knowledge is information. Applied knowledge is power. You got to use that knowledge to actually move forward. You can't just have it and store it and keep it there.
I like that.
And then, but there's also, I wanted to mention the fact that if you've heard of pushblack.org.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And that also, Mr. Dowdy, why we're in the situation we are, because like you said, we are in an election cycle, and we have elections in this state every year. There's an election at the state, local, or federal level every year, and one of them are up for grabs. and we sit out most of the time unless it's something that we think sadly we're kind of novelists when it comes to voting, right? When there's a question about marijuana being legal, I remember that was the first time, other than when President Obama ran for the first time, we got excited about the first of that. I saw people waiting as a police officer when I showed up. Normally when I show up to the polling, if I'm doing the early voting and I'm covering, I get there, it's only the poll workers that are waiting for me. And a lot of times I have to wait for them because we get there earlier than they do. And it was refreshing to see people standing out there waiting to vote. But it was only because they wanted to legalize marijuana here, and that somehow they thought that was going to change their status. And even with that, we haven't benefited in the way that they thought. When it was illegal, we still get arrested. But when it's become legalized, it's not obtainable. We're not being entrepreneurs in that field.
But people still can get arrested for it because it's legal. But people just think of it as like alcohol. You can't drive with it. You can't be out in public with it. It's legal for you to have it at home as medicine, personal use, but it's not legal for you to sell.
No, but what I say with that is that because now that it's become a business and a profitable business, we don't have access to it.
No, not in that sense. But there are people working to fix that, and there are some minority owners, such as Low Key, that's a minority, and then Kush Groove, another minority owner, and then there are some female owners as well. I don't know.
Mr. Dowdy, before we let you go, because it's been on the radar. Matter of fact, I just got an email from the city asking because some of the discrimination against police officers, my prior time as president of MAMLEO, as well as Dr. Bradley, and I think it's just something as a distraction because we're coming into an election cycle to try to quell people from talking about real issues. Is this whole thing about reparations? I want to get your take, if you have one, sir, on what you think about this conversation, because I think that's all it's ever going to be, is a conversation here in the Commonwealth. In states where we thought it wouldn't, like in Indiana, where they've actually put it into place and if people actually getting reparations, in this liberal state of Massachusetts, it's just conversation. I want to get your thoughts on it if you have any.
So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I always felt like the discussion of reparations was a distraction. Whether it passes or not, I'm more of the opinion that we need to uplift ourselves and not be dependent upon the government, and that if we don't come together as a community, it doesn't matter who receives reparations. They'll just spend it on whatever they need to spend it on for their support, and then they'll keep it moving. They're not going to be buying property. They're not going to be expanding our ownership and control. They're not going to be influencing us in government. They're just going to be taking care of whatever their immediate selfish needs are. It's like when the Democrats want to give more and more handouts to people of color rather than giving them job opportunities. The system that will give you, WIC, for women, infant, and children, it's very helpful to have that milk and bread, but you get off the program if the father of your child happens to be in the household to try to help support you.
But not only that, so you bring up a very good point with the WIC, but also on the other side, we give them also food stamp version, right? So the WIC is a healthy version, but then we give them the other ones, and they go out and have all these diseases acute because there is nothing that says you can't buy that sugary cereal, you can't buy that salty processed food, right? So I always said that the WIC should be the same. The food stamp should be the same. SNAP should be the same as WIC, right? Where you don't get to spend that money on
unhealthy things,
and then
right?
We have to give you health care to deal with the young juvenile diabetes and all the other health problems that come with it. I'm sorry, I know we're getting off track, but I mean, because when you brought that up, I think it's all.
It's a holistic thing, like right. Exactly. If you can't attack the problem if you're not going to talk about the nutrition, the health care, the education, right. All of it. Like the financial literacy, that part that he's talking about is like, hey, we need to get these people, like if they are getting help, you want to get them help, so that way it's like, the old notion, you can give them a fish or you can teach them how to fish. Right. All right, and you want to teach them how to fish, so that way they can become self-sustaining.
And I feel like reparations is just giving people fish. That to answer your question, I feel like we as a community need to begin to empower ourselves, not just educating ourselves about our own history, but educating ourselves about how to start our own businesses, about how to do more within our community and support ourselves. Half the time, black folks won't even buy from other black folks.
Well, not anymore, but before.
The white man's Kool-Aid is always sweeter or something, that terminology.
I think
and that's another discussion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get out.
I think I'm going to add another piece to that, because I'm gonna push back a little bit. I do agree that we need to be able to take care of ourselves and not depend on someone else. But I think reparation is due to me because of what my ancestors
went
did.
through, yeah.
Hold on. So I think I'm not looking for money, but I'm paying for my doctorate. Why not pay for that?
But also,
so I can educate myself. So I'm educated. Now I can produce. So that's where I'm going. I'm going that,
Right. But here's the thing to your education. I agree with you because the reparations should be starting at the bottom, right? Where education, like in Massachusetts, particularly here in the city of Boston, where the school system is so atrocious, where our kids are not learning, right? Let's fix that, because if we fix that, we may not need as many reparations, because when we can compete. But if you can't even read the basics, right, that should be the first reparation that they're adjusting.
But that also means that we need to do things differently.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I was taking my wife to a doctor's appointment the other day, and I was traveling through Newton. I think it's a Newton. Well, anyway, I was traveling through one of these suburban towns to get to this doctor, and I saw something on the side of the road, a sign that said YMCA Mathematical Camp. Think about that. YMCA Math Camp. And I said to my wife, "Do you see that?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I wish I had that when I was a child, because my mother and my father came from the South. They didn't have this skill set.
Right.
I had to learn that skill set and come back home and teach it to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so those are the kind of things I think that the black community is owed.
Right.
I'm not asking for your money. I'm asking for getting the resources I can do for myself.
But I think it's also an investment in society, because again, how much does it cost to house someone in prison? And it's like twice as much to send them to college.
Right. But to your point about the money, we know people that hit the lottery and they're broke. Right.
The
So
next
money
year,
doesn't solve their problems.
Got that right.
We got
It
another
was worse.
No, yeah.
We got another call. Let's bring this call. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Hey, good morning. This is Jamal. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, so I don't know if Brother Dowdy is still on the line.
I knew you were gonna. I knew it was probably gonna be for him.
I'm still here.
So we kept him on.
So I think we may have even talked, but Ken is my homeboy. I've known Ken for like 30 years.
Okay, then we probably have talked.
Yeah. So I'm the guy who, like, I tried to get y'all in City Hall and
I remember
public schools and all that. Yeah, and to your point, I was working on a book at one time called, like, What's Wrong with Boston? And I just wanted to do interviews because everybody who's been here and other places knows it's something very different in Boston. And there's other places that have the same stuff that we got. I mean, we're similar to New York, except, smaller in size, Connecticut and all that. But for whatever reason, their black communities don't seem as fractured as ours. Right? So when I go to these places, New York, Philly, Connecticut, Chicago, these people are dealing with the same, in some cases even worse than us, with, poverty, crime, and everything. But for whatever reason, their community, black community, doesn't seem as fragmented as ours and disenfranchised. Here we have so much. To me, that there's such a stark difference between, quote-unquote, the haves and the have-nots, the black masses and the bourgeoisie. So, we've got a lot of work to do, but I just wanted to say this, too, about reparations. The problem with reparations, and I always say this, like Dave Chappelle, I think, single-handedly did the biggest disservice to reparations ever. Because ever since he did that sketch, which was funny, right, it put that scenario in people's brain. Tyrone, what happens when Tyrone gets a check? And for those of us who've been in the reparations movement for decades and who are serious about it, nobody was ever thinking about anybody getting individual checks.
Right.
Reparations has always been about restoring infrastructural stuff.
Access.
So now look, to Dr. Bradley's point and to your point, you don't need money like, oh, I got a check, and yes, somebody gonna go buy a Cadillac or some, Hennessy, whatever, okay, all the stereotypes, right? But it does take money to do things like if we were able to have those YMCA math camps at all these places, or, to your point, like if we had, more ability to have coding and teaching kids coding and all, but all that does require money, right? But it's not individual checks, and those type of things could shape a generation, as you know, because right now these kids need to be learning coding. I tried to force my daughter to do it; she didn't listen either. But this is the new wave.
Well, to that point, the Vice President Harris, part of her agenda is she's saying that if she's elected, that she, by executive order, would eliminate you having to have a college degree to compete, because she realizes that people have a skill set. A lot of times people have more knowledge than people with degrees, and I'm not diminishing the degrees, but that if you can do the job, I guess is what you're saying, that should not prohibit you, because there are a lot of jobs that are not filled, and people graduate with degrees and they can't find a job, right? So you get people who have been working in a company who know more about what they're doing, and they have to train the person coming in with the college degree. They should be able to compete for that position as well. And then the best person gets it. That gives you a little edge, fine. But if you have less knowledge about the subject matter than the person who's been doing it for 20 years,
I have a personal story about that. Like family members, again, because immigrants coming from Haiti and everything. My mom trained everyone in her department, and she was a lab technician. Mm-hmm. She trained her supervisor, her manager. They never promoted her. They always kept her there in that same position. Right. And then she ended up suing the state, and they compromised and said, all right, we're not going to give you the title, but you can take early retirement. You'll get your full retirement. You just take your retirement and get out.
Get you out of here. So Mr. Dowdy, Jamal, throw that to you. You guys seem to know each other. I'm not surprised because of the work that Brother Jamal does. What are your thoughts on his comments? Did we lose?
I didn't hear that last part.
I said, no, your thoughts on what Jamal has said about the reparation piece?
Oh, I'm very firmly in agreement with something along those lines, but I've always, and maybe it's in my head, but I've always, when I've heard people talk about reparations and when I've actually been involved with organizations that were talking about reparations, because they talked about the financial aspect of it, in my mind, it sounded like, everyone wanted to get their 40 acres and a mule. Whereas, what Jerome was talking about was, hey, we need to improve our infrastructure and our schools and, have funding for programs that help our communities to advance and get better health care for our young people. Those kind of resources financially, and that can come from, the government. If that was a part of the reparations program, then I'm all for it. What I'm not, too keen on is this whole concept of we need to get money individually.
Right.
I mean, my own background, I'm from Jamaica, and so my parents came over here as immigrants. And they're always like, listen, we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we all lived in the same house until we could afford to get another house. And then, we all bundled our money together so you could go to college, and then your brothers could go to college. And then you gave back so that your other family members. Yeah. So it was all about the community building itself up.
Right.
And that's always been my mindset. So when I hear people talk about reparations, financially, it's in my head that it's individual, but I do agree that if the reparations are, hey, the communities that have been impacted, that are predominantly communities of color, they get increased funding for education and healthy supermarkets, not just the corner stores, and better infrastructure. So in that case, I'm all for it.
Right. Mr. Dowdy, can you stand back, because we've got another call. I'm sure this comment is directed to you. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Siddiqui.
Yes, I think we're on somewhat of a winning streak here. I think this is second or third conversation in a row that I'm lined up the same way as Jamal.
Well, they said a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this, that, I find it very interesting when there seems to be questions about our receiving, quote-unquote, reparations. Look, it's not about the individual check. The bottom line is that, tell me something, did the Jews turn down reparations? I don't think so. Did the Japanese, after World War II, did they turn down reparations? No. Look here. The bottom line is that we got to do for self, which is clear. But based on what our ancestors went to in terms of building this country, from the ground on up, we are owed reparations. reparations. Now, we're not talking about going out and buying a car. My perspective is that there should be an economic development fund overseen by some of our economic experts in this country. And that the bottom line is that it's not about trying to enrich the academic infrastructure of this country, because it's nothing that works for our young people. What we need to be able to do is to say, you know what? We're going to have our own schools.
Right. Well, let me
We're going to have our own hospitals.
But see, that has to be with people like Dr. Bradley being the person that is putting out the curriculum, right? Who is going to educate them from the bottom up, right? Because if you don't have the basics, it's like a house, right? If you don't have a good foundation to build on, then the house is not going to stand. It's not going to weather the storm. And so a lot of times, if you have these institutions that don't teach people the history of this country, right? What we're learning today, I'm learning so much about our people that I did not know. And since my phone has been dinging all morning with people sending me information about black people and what their contributions were to this country and to the world, right? And so, but you can't learn that in the Boston public school systems and most school systems in general.
Yeah, and look here, Larry, the bottom line is that we've got to build our own black nation within a nation. We got to have our own schools, not talk about how we can improve the quality of education. That system is set up for our youngsters to fail. So like I'm saying before,
Boston
we need to
taught
have
me that.
black schools, black hospitals, housing, commercial districts, and we're not talking about inventing something that's new. We've had the Black Wall Streets and the Rosemonts, and what happens that whenever black people come together from that perspective, we get attacked. So what I'm saying is that
but let me just jump in
there,
there,
Siddiqui. This reparations campaign, along with what we're doing to build for self.
Right. Let me jump in there.
Need and deserve reparations from this country, and it needs to be pursued.
I don't disagree, but let me jump in there because of what Jamal, with Dr. Bradley, with Mr. Dowdy said. If we were to get a school, let's say we put Dr. Bradley in charge of that, because I think he'd be phenomenal in that role. How many people would support? See, we don't support our own, right? So how many people would send their kids to that school because they would think they would not be getting as much as they're not getting in the Boston public school? They would rather keep their kids in a system that doesn't work.
Okay, so Larry, though, that goes to the Boston point, because it's not like that everywhere else. Okay. So the people I know, forget about clowns like Dr. Umar, who's been talking about building a school for years, and he shouldn't even be around children, but there are plenty of successful black schools all around. I know plenty in Philly, Chicago, Atlanta, and they're jam-packed. The tuition, enrollment is like, there's a waiting list, okay?
That's good to
even up here, we saw, this is kind of a more, I want to say corporate, type of environment, but up here, when they started off with the Edward Brooke Charter School, and they were putting up numbers off the Richter, right? So there's models from every kind, from actual personal African-centered schools to the more non-profit-y charter school model. But we have some models to go on. And at the collegiate level, let's not forget, people make jokes about the HBCUs, but if we pluck out some of the ones that are really doing some phenomenal stuff, if we look at Howard, if we look at Hampton, and then if we look at Tuskegee, people be sleeping on Tuskegee, but they be doing a lot of high science stuff, working with NASA and everything, continuing the legacy of George Washington Carver, because some of the plastics that they create and the polymers are on the space station and all this stuff right now.
Right. So let me just envision this, and then Dr. Bradley, because see, this is why what we're trying to do is move this Saturday conversation to try to raise money. This is why it's important. We're trying to raise funds for Boston Praise Radio so that we can have this conversation during the week, right? But just imagine if we were able to move this to that. But also, let's say we were able to really talk about that, and we have someone like Dr. Bradley running a school of that magnitude, and then we have someone like Brother Rose teaching financial literacy to our kids, right? And bringing in other people with the skill set, having someone like Jamal and Brother Dowdy coming in and talking to our kids about reality, not just about entertaining, because our kids know more about entertaining than they know about real life, right? And then a lot of their decisions are based on what's popular, because they don't understand the history. They don't understand why it's important that black people go out and vote in their best interest, not what party or letter they had beside their name. Dr. Riley?
If I may interject, because I mentioned this earlier through a previous broadcast about our EE ratio. Our EE ratio in our community is extremely off. The education versus entertainment ratio is like 1 to 300. It's crazy. Also, and I think the problem, our solution is right in front of us. It's called economics, black economics. Our black economic situation, if we would actually take all the money aggregated in the black community, we'll be richer than half of the nations of the members of the United Nations.
Right.
If you think about that.
Well, they're saying that in the black community, in the Jewish community, the money goes to their community at least 10 times before it leaves. Exactly. And in the black community, it doesn't even spend it.
Exactly. But that's a mindset, brother. See, that's a mindset. That's a conditioning that we have actually been under since we got here. Is that whatever we do is not as good as the people who actually brought us here. And so the trick becomes, and I think Siddiqui and I think everybody on this phone got it. How do we break that mindset? So we can actually start doing these things for ourselves. Yeah. We can start educating ourselves and and we have models of it. Someone just mentioned Black Wall Street in Rosemont. As you go through the history of America, as I read it, as I consume it, I'm looking, I'm like, wow. But every time we got it, it was taken. Right. It was taken brutally. So when people start talking, something happened in America, and someone said something. Well, this is the first time that they dropped bombs on Americans. No, it's not. If you look at what happened in Black Wall Street, no, it's not. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so. But if you don't know that history, you don't understand exactly how America actually put its foot on the neck of Black America, you're not going to begin to understand exactly what you need to do to get that foot off your neck.
So Dr. Bradley's point, Siddiqui and gentlemen, how do we move in that direction? Because we do a lot of talking about it, and there's very few of us that actually want to do the legwork because there is lifting to do this work. And a lot of people want someone else to do it for them. And even when they do, they don't do it. Like, for instance, I give you a quick example. As president of MAMLEO, I filed numerous lawsuits, and we were successful in quite a few of them.
Yeah, I benefited from it.
Right. One of the largest recently was a $40 million statewide for discrimination for promotion. The number of people who received those checks were not even in the fight. But they had no problem with cashing the checks. See, we want to benefit from the work.
But Larry, not to cut you off, but this is the hit. This is the hit, because you hit a good point. How many of those folks came back to the organization to give money so that you can do other lawsuits?
You hear the crickets, huh?
See, that's the hit. Right. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, the conditioning. Right. I got mine. You did it for me. I keep it moving. Now I'm not going to reach back and say,
that's the problem. We need to reach back. We need to give back.
There might be other people, other situations that the organization is beginning to actually see, and they need the funding to actually go and move on this. And this funding, if you would have given just 1% or 5% of that reward.
Now we got to go with the church. We got to go with the church, 10%.
The tithing.
So Siddiqui, are you still there?
Yeah.
How do we move in that direction? I think we have.
Let me just say this: that something we're not looking at is the fact that we have a potential model right here in Roxbury. I know we talk about gentrification, and people are saying, "Well, change the name to Nubian Square. What does it mean?" Now, I remember Richard Taylor saying to me a long time ago, before we had the vote, that he said, Siddiqui, he says, it was really great with this name change. He says, but he said, I don't know if you understand the depth of the importance of what this is going to mean for the community. So we have the potential right here to be a model, because I talked to folks who said that Nubian Square has been mentioned in other cities across the country because of the fact that if you notice, there are businesses that are gravitating towards, first of all, let's look at the Blair lot. Richard Taylor is going to be a huge project. The Bay State Banner just moved to John Elliott Square, which is within the borders of Nubian Square. The One United Bank, they're going to be building their new headquarters in John Elliott Square. You've got Beckma, and then it's Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics, who is saying that he sees Boston and New York as being the models for the new Black Wall Street. So what I'm saying essentially is that the potential is there. We understand about gentrification, but we got to see to it that we're able to stay where we are. But I'm confident that we have the capability, not only here, but across the country, to do what's necessary. And let me close with this. I remember I got drafted in the military, and I was stationed in Germany.
You fought in the Civil War?
Okay, watch out.
That might be the best comment of the
Jamal and I we're on a roll here. Let me get jiggy with that. But anyhow, bottom line is I was stationed in Germany with his brother. He was a sergeant from North Carolina, and he had told me that in his town, he said it was named after his family. And he said if they saw a white person, they would look at him like, what are they doing? And he said we had our own banks, you know, our own schools, the whole bit there. And so I said to myself, yeah, well, he's telling me all that. I was down that area years ago, down in North Carolina, and on the highway, and there was a town named after his family. So I'm just saying that if we look at what our ancestors did, they had nothing, and they rebuilt the family infrastructure, had our own businesses, our own schools, so the potential is there. We need to stop talking about how, well, because of racism, we don't have that potential. We do if we have that mindset. And let me just say this. I don't have a problem with Trump being president because of the fact that with Trump, the one thing I respect about him is that he says, you know what, I don't like black people. I'm not going to do nothing for black people. And so what you going to do for yourselves? And so I'm heading up a group, national group right now, where we got a lot of folks coming on board. We just did a national summit, and what it is the reason why a lot of folks are coming in our direction is that they understand the only alternative we're going to have, and I believe Trump's going to get elected, the only alternative we're going to have is to do for self, because we've been biding our time, waiting for Biden to do what we got to do for ourselves. We're moving in that direction, and I'm confident these young folks who are out here, although they're not where I'd like to see them at, I think there's an undercurrent of young folks here and in Africa who are saying, you know what, we ain't putting up with this. We gonna make a change. So, yeah.
Well, brother, I hope you're wrong on Trump getting elected, though.
They are going to make a change in the voting booth.
I hope you're wrong on Trump getting elected.
Thank you. So, you know, it's ironic. I'm looking over my shoulder and it says, vote Nubian Square November 5th, 2019. And now we've come full circuit. It's November 5th. 2024.
Yeah,
right. We've gone full circle.
5 years later.
5 years later, it's the same date.
Well, let me tell you one of my concerns, and you know, so I take the Black Wall Street thing serious, you know, because at the end of the day, those are our ancestors. A lot of people died. There's a lot of life that was lost there, right? And you know, me watching these documentaries, you know, for over 30 years, because a lot of people just like. This is new to them. They found out in the last couple of years or something. And now, Black Wall Street, it's T-shirts, it's sloganeering. I said this in a live one time. It's kind of like what we did with the fictional superhero movie with the Wakanda.
Yep.
Everybody got fascinated. And, you know, if this would have happened at that time, Jalen would have been saying, we're going to build a Black Wakanda, Boston. You know what I mean? And so it's a lot of sloganeering and whatnot. But I don't think it takes into account the actual seriousness of it. So when a basketball player who's 28 years old and not even from here comes to Boston and says, I want to do a Black Wall Street, I kind of find it disrespectful.
Well, let me just say this,
and then,
Jamal.
Hold on, let me just finish with this. And then when it was in the newspaper or what I saw, the first round, he gave $100,000, or his foundation gave $100,000 to 10 entrepreneurs around here. Now, all 10 of them, if they took that $100,000 and they all put all of it together, they can buy a house in Roxbury.
Well, not only because
they got $100,000 apiece.
Right? No, they got $100,000.
Yeah, that's what I said. 10 people with $100,000. That's $1 million, and you could barely buy a house in Roxbury for that.
So he gave each one $100,000.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
10 different entrepreneurial, entrepreneurs.
Because I thought it was $100,000 total. I'm not that be grateful, but I'm like, he got a $30+ million contract a year per year.
He gave each one $100,000 for a total $1 million.
Okay, then I feel better because I when I first heard it, I'm like $100,000 for somebody just got a $30+ million a year contract.
Yeah, but he's not getting.
It's not like he's giving them his money out of his pocket either. This is foundation money that's raised or whatever. But 10 people got $100,000 each.
That's not even the interest on the $30 million.
He's not getting the whole $30 million though.
Why not?
because he's paying taxes.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying he probably has his home in Florida. So
I'm just saying.
No, I get that part of it. So I appreciate it. Siddiqui, thank you, sir. We appreciate you calling in. And we definitely want to continue this conversation because it's important. Mr. Dowdy, I know we've held you longer than we probably you expected to be here, but I think it sparked quite a conversation this morning, sir. And we're going to have you hold on just one last time so Pastor Hobbs can get your information so that we can stay in contact and continue this conversation. And honestly, we would love to work with you also trying to help grow this station, right? Because, again, if people were able to hear this not just on Saturday morning, but this type of conversation on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, like the gentleman that called in earlier said, he was flipping through the dial trying to find something that he could listen to, and he heard this, and he couldn't wait to call in because it's something that was of interest to him. There are a lot of people out there who may not even call in, but are listening and would be well suited and helped by having this type of dialogue and not just being entertained. And the perfect example of that is that I remember when I was excited when BET, Black Entertainment Television, announced they were going to be, and I thought it was going to be something that was going to inform us. It was just videos. It was entertainment. It was very little news, very little information. And on election time, they would come up with this thing. But I'm like, what? In the short span of time? That you think in a couple of weeks of having information is enough? People need to be hit with that information every day because that gets embedded in their mind. But
that's what Trump is doing. He's hitting them every day, over and over again.
The same old stuff.
Same old stuff.
So, Jamal, stand by. Mr. Dowdy, any parting remarks before we let you go?
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was just a random thought. I said, should I actually call in? Are they even going to hear me? And then it ended up sparking quite the discussion. Yes. And there are so many topics that we touched on, things that are near and dear to my own heart. All I can say is, that I love the fact that, that people of color, that men like myself, are engaged enough to make that step forward. Mm-hmm. And wherever this conversation goes, for each of us individually, I hope that we can partner together because we have an incredible reach on blackfacts.com, and I feel like the conversation that we're having here are things that we can share, through our social media network and through our web platform, because I think it's important for other young people to hear the voices of their elders, but for other elders to be able to say, hey, I can participate and have my voice heard and have my opinion heard and respected. Yeah. And so I really appreciate the opportunity. And thank you.
And exactly, especially hearing from a Civil War veteran. I mean, like,
I'm telling you, you've got to show respect to your true elders.
That was incredible.
Hey, I just want to know which side did he fight on?
Well, that's true. Siddiqui, he was probably in the middle trying to decide.
No, Siddiqui was probably rounding all the brothers and said, let's march.
I think that's where he probably came up with that Mason-Dixon line. Mr. Dowdy, please stand by. Pastor Hobbs is going to put you on. He's going to grab your information. He's going to give you my contact information. I'd love to connect with you, sir, and we'd love to get you on the broadcast. Again, thank you for your time this morning, and we look forward to getting more of it. Pastor Hobbs.
Thank you all.
And Jamal, stand by because we want to get your take on this election coming up. We know you're calling. What have you been seeing out there on the ground? Are people voting in the community? I know you're out there in the city. I'm not in here every day like I used to. Any look on the numbers?
It's scary. I mean, at least where I went for early voting was not packed, but I went the very first day it was open.
Okay.
It was not packed, so I don't know subsequently how the early voting has been going. I haven't seen any lines when I've been driving by. People in other areas that I know, other states and stuff, have definitely told me that they've had lines around the corner.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that level of enthusiasm up here.
Yeah. And it goes to
I haven't been getting a bunch of, phone calls or text messages. It kind of seems kind of ho-hum.
Well, that's the thing is because they don't see Massachusetts is considered a safe Democrat state. The battle is not a battleground state. Those folks are saying they've had enough. It's like they want to call uncle. But I want to get your take, and particularly Dr. Brad. I'm
talking about even the locals.
Right. Oh, okay. On this question, too, on whether or not the MCATs should stay in place, whether or not they should continue. Yes means they want to get rid of it as a requirement for graduation. No, they want to keep it in place. Where do you fall on that, Dr. Brown?
I voted yes on it.
You voted yes to remove the
yeah.
See, I voted. I voted no.
I did too.
I voted yes on
And
it.
I voted no.
I don't, as an educator, I think it's wrong when I'm actually teaching someone to a test as opposed to teaching someone to think critically.
I agree, but here's my concern is that if there's nothing that tests the ability, and I'm not saying that it has to be MCAS, but if when I see people want to take, it's like Trump wanting to take away Obamacare with nothing to replace it, with at least test, do you have the basics? Because when I'm seeing kids in the Boston public schools when I was there that couldn't even read the diploma they were given.
I'm not saying that they should not be anything there.
Right.
I think that the teacher who's a professional should be able to have resources to help those individuals who cannot read.
Right.
You know, I know people who will probably, if the NCAS were in place under the current system, before the NCAS, they probably wouldn't be able to graduate.
Right.
All right. But I'm saying is that as I'm teaching, if I'm teaching to a test, I'm not teaching my kid to think broadly.
I totally agree with that.
And I don't think that's healthy.
Because I haven't heard anything that says we're going to replace finding out where these kids are, right? I think we'll go back to the same system we were, where we just get through the day and that's good enough, and these kids aren't learning.
I don't mind testing, but I think that we have to ensure that the tests are not set up so that they're somehow biased.
No, we agree, because perfect example is that all the lawsuits we've had to file against promotional
Right,
exams
with the police tests.
Exactly. So I agree.
See, okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
restructuring something that
Yeah,
just
I got it, and
Okay.
so I see that in the same issue in the school system. Like I don't believe in testing to enter into doctoral programs or law school. All that stuff was put together to keep black people out. You know, all that stuff was put together for a self-fulfilling prophecy. That I'm stupid and I put you through a bad school system, and then you try to take a test that was geared for a person who went through a good school system, and then you say, well, it's not my fault.
We're in agreement here. My concern is that because of what I've seen up close in working in the schools, is that we need to have something that tests the ability of do you have the basics before we unleash you out there into the public, right? To try to survive, to try to get a job when you can't even read.
But see, my understanding of it was that it was not about testing. It was about allowing the individual, the teacher, to actually, allowing the teacher to actually teach the kid how to think, teach the kid how to actually interpret each piece of material. Right now, we're teaching to a test, and I'm thinking that standard teaching to a test is not healthy.
I totally agree with that. I just would have liked to have something in there that explained.
Well, I think they did a poor job educating it, explaining
a process, because my feel is that they'll back off and just back into cruise control again. Right. Jamal, we got a minute. We're gonna give it to you. Well,
just on that last point, there definitely needs to be some sort of barometer to measure proficiency.
I agree. That's the piece.
Okay.
Yep.
So no different than if I teach you, firearms class.
Right.
At the end of the class, I need to see you hit the target.
Right.
If I teach you how to swim, at the end of the class, I need to make sure you don't sink to the bottom. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there has to karate. You're going to need to do the front kick and the block in order to advance to the next belt. Right. So there has to be some test for proficiency, but I don't like the way the testing is done in America generally.
I totally agree with
that. And there are too many people who take tests differently.
Yeah.
It never affected me.
Right.
I was one of the people that just didn't even have to study, would just go in because tests didn't bother me.
Right.
And I'd be done so quick they thought I was cheating.
Right.
But that was me. Other people who were smarter than me, just the test, seeing the thing, particularly the ones with the little dots you fill in.
Right.
Their eyes started to go crazy, and it just like stressed them out, almost like an anxiety or panic attack.
Right.
So we have to create a system of testing that tests proficiency.
Right.
Driver's license is another great example because we want to make sure you got the basics.
Exactly.
But that's it. We just have to revamp our testing.
Right. We're going to continue this. Like I said, we're going to put this coalition together. We had some great calls this morning, great conversation. Brother Jamal, thank you, sir. I will see you soon. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks.
All right. Pastor Brother Rose, anything before we let you go?
No, just again, keep informed, go out there and vote, and stay vigilant, people.
Dr. Bradley, voting is Tuesday, November 5th. Not 2019, but 2024. Dr. Bradley.
Be blessed.
Amen.
While your baby mom's stripping, while your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't got a lot of me to sell.
Right. Is it live or Memorex? We're live this morning. The recording was about to take over there. Good morning. Welcome to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. And here, engineering as usual, Pastor Hobbs. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. You know, I tell you, that spiritual inspiration I always get when I come in here a few minutes ahead. No, really, I tell you, you need that coming in here early in the morning, something to wake you up, shock your system into why am I up at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? This is why I'm up. So good morning, folks. Again, you're listening at the Round Table with MAMLEO. The call-in number here is 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685 is the call-in number here. You know, we've got a host of topics we're going to be discussing this morning.